CEO. If I shorten it to president, is that going
That's
to offend
fine.
you? Okay. Some people get very sensitive about
Right.
their titles.
No. I got both for really corporate reasons. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So what's with all these settlements?
So we need to put some stuff in context, really. Everybody's against fraud, so that's sort of a given. And in these Florida cases, every Florida case of fraud, a patient was served. So I'm putting this into context because I think it's important for viewers to be able to understand this. In every one of these cases, it's either a difference of medical opinion on whether the patient was appropriate for admission or not, or an inadequate documentation. So that's every case of fraud, hospice fraud in Florida. The patient was served. Most of them died on service as well. But that's the root of all these cases. So when you start looking at the number of patients served in Florida, we have 135,000 patients a year are served in Florida. So there's going to be mistakes in the process. And when you look at the scale of the hospice programs, these recoupments that CMS is getting, taking the money back, they're a tiny single-digit percentage of the overall revenue of these hospice programs. So millions of dollars, $3, $4, $5 million recoupment is a lot of money. But when you look at it in the context of it's a $500 or $600 or $700 million company during that same time period, it starts looking like a lot less significant percentage of the total. Is that helpful?
Sure.
context?
Yeah. I guess one of my questions would be, you're saying this is a difference of medical opinion.
Right.
But many of these, let me rephrase that, but these lawsuits describe dozens and dozens of patients who were kept on hospice for years, not just 6 months.
Right. So there are some outlier cases where patients are long length of stay, but the average length of stay for a hospice patient in Florida is 71 days. The median length of stay is 28 days. So there are some disease states that are really hard to predict. Those cases you're talking about are very likely Alzheimer's or dementia related. They're very hard to predict the trajectory.
What do you say to taxpayers who see these settlements as a slap on the wrist?
Well, you have to look at the process that takes place. So when the CMS sends the hospice an initial claim and says, we think you owe us $20 million or $30 million, that's not a bill, that's a starting point. So they go through a deliberative process where they look at the individual charts one by one, and on most of them, particularly the medical opinion ones, they negotiate those out of the agreement. So they come to a final conclusion based on a process. So it's not like I said, it's not a bill, and it's a deliberative process between CMS and the hospice program. But it's millions of dollars they're giving back for patients they did serve.
It is millions of dollars, but some of these companies are accused of stealing hundreds of millions.
Well, if they were stealing, then they would be Department of Justice, criminal division involvement. None of these cases have that, not one. They're all civil division, Department of Justice, and Office of the Inspector General.
We spoke to said he tried going to management first and they didn't take action. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know the particulars of that case. I do know when you're talking about fact patterns, and that's an important piece of this, whistleblowers can say whatever they want to say. But unless the facts are tried in an administrative court or stipulated on in that corporate integrity agreement, it's just his opinion. It's not really a fact, an established fact. So the facts, they need to be established. The hospices typically don't rebut a whistleblower talking to the press.
Which brings me to my next question. Why didn't hospices want to tell me their side of the story? What did they tell you?
Well, I think most of them view it as sort of a private matter now, that they've reached a corporate integrity agreement.
But these are tax dollars we're talking about.
Right.
It's public money.
Right, and they're giving it back.
A fraction of what they're being accused of
Right.
defrauding.
Right. But you have to look at the process, and the process is important, because once they start negotiating these claims, they go through the claims one at a time, and CMS is not going to forgive something they think the hospice owes. So they've reached a settlement here based on discussion and fact patterns. So I would contend that they're giving back all that they owe.
From your perspective, why do these cases keep settling instead of going all the way?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, really. It depends on the resources of the hospice program. It's a huge, huge distraction for a hospice program to have one of these things going on. It takes money away from patient care. It takes time and energy away from patient care. Some of them want it to be done as quickly as they can get it behind them. One of those two issues, the medical opinion piece, is being litigated in federal court as we speak. And it could be that will, in the future, they'll no longer be able to call that fraud. Because the federal district court in northern Alabama said a difference in medical opinion between two physicians is not fraud. So we may be down to just inadequate documentation. But no one's stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the government without getting handcuffs put on.
Those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you feel like we're missing here? Anything else you want to talk about that you feel like we haven't covered?
No, I think that pretty well covers it.
Okay.
Would you like my talking points?
Sure, absolutely. I always take more information.
Right.
As you can see, I'm a little bit of a document hoarder.
I'm just
Joel,
gonna
was there
get a
anything
couple shots of you guys talking.
Anything you wanted to ask? Is there anything you felt like I was missing?
I don't think so. I think you kind of covered it all.
So we're just going to grab some shots of us talking. It helps
Okay.
us with the editing.
Okay.
Probably won't use the audio, but you are still wearing a mic.
All right.
These are more for introduction shots when we're talking about you and kind of the things that we talked about.
Sure.
So are there any other trends that you're noticing right now in the hospice industry that you think are interesting?
Well, as Americans age, the demand for hospice is going to go up. So yeah, absolutely, hospices are going to continue to grow in terms of census. There are trends like shortening length of stay, which is a disturbing thing. The hospice benefit is for a patient who, under the normal course of the disease, would be expected to live 6 months or less. And for a patient to really fully utilize the benefit of hospice, all the psychosocial care, the spiritual care, physical care, spiritual care, all those aspects of it, they really need more than a couple of days or a few weeks in hospice. So it's disturbing to see the shortening length of stay. And there's a lot of competition for the patients, really. And so acute care is keeping them longer, those sorts of things. But I think it is going to grow. The number of people in hospice is going to grow as the baby boomers age. It's going to continue to be good.
When you say that the competition for patients is growing, how do hospices compete with one another?
Oh, well, they market. They have marketers just like any other sector of healthcare. And they build relationships with referral agents, hospitals, physicians, and those sorts of people. And then they try to contribute to the community by doing things other than just hospice services. And when you look at how people view hospices in most communities, they view them as the hometown hospice or part of the family. And people come up to me and say things like, oh, they were angels when they served my mom or my dad or that kind of thing. So it's a lot of levels of marketing, but being part of the community is a huge piece of it.
It's got to be such a difficult job to work in a hospice, and all the people that you are serving are toward the end of their life. That's got to be tough. It's got to be tough to find employees who have the heart to be able to do that.
That's exactly right, and you touched on it right there. That having a heart for hospice is key to having employees that can withstand it, if you will.
Yeah.
Weather it. There's a high incidence of what they call compassion fatigue, and so people that work in hospice have to take steps to to deal with their own feelings and emotions as all their patients pass away. So it's a challenge for them.
Do you have everything you need?
I believe so, yeah.
All right. Quick and easy.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.